Welcome to the Why Not podcast with me, Chrissy Hawkins. In a world where everybody asks you why, I'm here to ask why not. So sit back and relax or walk and listen and join me on this journey as we try to answer this never-ending question: what makes people say, why not? Welcome back to Why Not. So today I am joined by Marci Carroll. So she is a mum of two and psychotherapist who works with mothers. And I'm going to let Marci tell you a little bit more about that herself. But first, I just want to say welcome to the podcast, Marci. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Chrissy. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this kind of topic as well. So firstly, can you just tell everybody who you are and what do you do?
Yeah. So I suppose, as you said, I am a psychotherapist, but primarily mum of two. Like that's my main role. And yeah, so based on kind of my experience of kind of coming into motherhood, which was rocky to say the least, and we can get to that. My primary focus now, I'm passionate about supporting mums in those early days, weeks, months, and even years of motherhood. And I suppose just the big piece is that it's such a steep learning curve. It was certainly the steepest learning curve that I ever went on. And I'm still on it. Like my babies are 8 and 11. But I've never been mum to an 8-year-old boy or an 11-year-old girl before. So I am still on that learning curve. But certainly the initial part, I think is harder than it needs to be because there's so much of it that's not talked about. Not talked about enough in advance to prepare mothers, and not talked enough kind of during either. So I suppose my mission is individual support, individual and group support, but also opportunities like this, which I'm so grateful for, to come and I suppose just a little bit of kind of education around it, to kind of get the conversations going about what exactly it's like.
Do you know, I love the way you said that as well, where you said, I've never been a mum to an 8-year-old boy or an 11-year-old girl before, because I think, I don't know, like I don't have children, so I've never experienced all this, but I do feel like there is that sense out there that you should just know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And there's not enough people out there saying that, like, even 8 years on, 11 years on, I'm still not fully certain, like, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And some days less certain than ever. And I mean, an 11-year-old girl, oof,
I'm a
we're
teenage girl, I know.
we're going into a whole new territory here. But yeah, it's the initial, for me anyway, and for the mums that I work with, and for the mums who come to me for support, it's that kind of shock. Really, is the piece of like, what just happened, like, and why didn't anyone tell me? Why did nobody warn me?
Yeah, no, that's really true. I think, I suppose, what brought you to do this? Like, let's go right back to the start. What brought you into this realm? Like, what drew you to becoming a psychotherapist and dealing with this specifically would be really interesting to talk about as well.
Yeah, okay. So I suppose, kind of going right back, my primary degree was psychology. So there's always just been a real fascination about the human mind and what makes us different, and kind of individual differences and personality. Like I've just always been fascinated by that. So I loved every minute of my psychology degree. But then I suppose kind of, it was 1990s Ireland. I was like, well, what do you do with that? And it really was, that kind of scratch the head. Well, really, now what? And kind of the roots really were further education, to specialise in some, like, to specialise in a particular aspect of psychology. And the one that I was drawn to was educational psychology. But I didn't feel ready to kind of jump straight into a master's. So I worked as an SNA, a special needs assistant in a classroom, and really enjoyed that. And yeah, I suppose somehow kind of made the decision that rather than the master's, I'd retrain, and retrain as a teacher. So I did that for quite a number of years, and there were aspects of it that I loved, and teaching has been very good to me. I I had my maternity leaves. I had the opportunity to job share. So I suppose just to backtrack a little bit, in the middle of that, I was still being pulled kind of into psychology,
Mm.
and the psychotherapy route kind of well, was what I was being pulled to. So I did a foundation course, just 6 months, just to kind of check it out. Absolutely loved that, and just knew, oh, this is it. So I was able to do that alongside my teaching. I had the opportunity to job share and kind of, pivot, I suppose, very slowly and very gradually, which was wonderful to be able to do that. So job shared for a few years, took a career break then, and then no shock, I think, when I handed in my resignation to say, I'm focusing 100% now on psychotherapy. And then the piece about supporting mothers, like along that route, I had my children, and my daughter. I had my daughter just a month after I finished my psychotherapy training. And you would think, and I naively thought, sure, I'm sorted. I've all this training. I'm a teacher, therapy. I'll be grand, and I was not grand. So it was kind of from that it came that I need to use everything that I know, everything that I've learned, to support mums.
Yeah, I find that really interesting how like initially it was the psychology degree you did and then you actually went to teaching. And I totally understand what you're meaning there, like 1990s Ireland, like, psychology stuff, yeah, whatever. Like even now it's still tough to try and get people, like people are opening up more and working more with like a therapist, psychologist, all stuff like that now. But what was that like making that decision? Obviously it was always there because you were retraining, but making that decision to step away from teaching because, obviously that's a very safe, very easy, not easy, like the job's not easy, but like you've got a lot of benefits, and I think you deal with a lot to earn those benefits. But what was like making that decision to go, no, I'm actually going to follow my passion here, this is something that's always been there?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see from the outside, it must just look like madness to walk away from permanent pensionable job, in the holidays, and people make so much of the holidays, but actually the holidays aren't much good to you if the day to day isn't lighting you up. And it just wasn't really anymore in the end. And I stayed with it for as long as I did because of the holidays and because of my very small children. It was so helpful then. But actually, they're at a stage now where during the holidays they want to be with their friends, they want to be doing camps. And what was happening for me was I was missing the likes of their sports days and their school play, and like I was missing those things because those things were going on in my school and I couldn't be away. Um, so that flip really came, from that very practical lifestyle piece, but also just such a pull and a passion towards psychotherapy. And I certainly didn't rush into it. I job shared for 4 years. So I kept the two kind of going for 4 years. And then it did get to a point where I was wearing three hats. So I had my teaching hat, my psychotherapy hat, and my mammy hat. And I just felt so split, and felt like I wasn't doing any of them right. And of the three, the kids weren't going anywhere. And I just loved the psychotherapy so much. I didn't want to move away from it. So that's why I kind of tiptoed out. I, kind of reduced the hours to job share and then said, right, I'm going to take the career break, and just so lucky to have that opportunity. Like I know how fortunate and privileged I was to be in a job that facilitated that. Um, but yeah, kind of on career break, I just didn't miss teaching, and I loved the work I was doing. So yeah, so the decision kind of made itself.
Yeah, that's fair. How did it feel to actually make that decision and go, okay, I'm leaving teaching?
Um, I suppose, as I said, because I like really had been building up to it and working towards it for so long, I was absolutely at peace with it by the time it did come. Um, So yeah, it feels good. Yeah.
No, I'm delighted to hear that. No, it's just interesting, and you did do it kind of in a really good way. I think as you gradually built it, so when the decision came, it wasn't like pulling the rug. It was just taking that step forward into what you want to do. You know.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I'm so grateful and so privileged to have that opportunity. But it really was a tiptoe out. So when I look back and reflected in my last 10 years of teaching, I had done one full year. Between the job shares, between the school closing, so the school was
Oh,
closed for 2 good chunks. Now I was still online, and so, so I probably shouldn't discount those at that time, but for part of 2 of the years the school was closed with COVID, I had my maternity leaves, I had the career break. So overall in that 10-year period, I had done 1 full September to June. So it I really took my time with it. There was no rushing into it at all. Yeah.
no, I love that. So coming back to working with mothers, and obviously you said yourself there when you had your first child, you were like, I'm going to be grand, and you were not.
Mm. Yeah.
What do you think? I suppose I'm trying to figure out how to kind of word this, but like, what do you think maybe are some of the things that don't, well, people aren't prepared for with motherhood, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So I suppose for me, the big piece was everything I had done to prepare was completely baby orientated. So I had all of the baby sleep books, all of the baby feeding. I really went down a rabbit hole with this idea of the baby's routine, get a baby into a routine. But actually what that ended up doing for me personally was bringing me into quite a deep state of anxiety. If the baby, and the baby isn't a machine, it's not a put in a preset program. So if the baby wasn't sleeping to schedule, wasn't feeding to schedule, that was sending me into quite a deep place of anxiety and what am I doing wrong? Like this isn't what the book says. So and I hear that now, and anyway, that's where I went with it, and that's what happened to me. I didn't realize that it was going to impact every aspect of my life, just across the board. I wasn't fully prepared for the physical impact, and again, all the baby books are all about the 9 months, and you get these apps with
Mm.
the, what fruit, what size is the baby each month. Like it's all so focused on the 9 months. And I just genuinely didn't know that that has to be balanced on the other side. It doesn't just happen that baby comes out and back you go to, it just doesn't happen like that at all. And I didn't know that. I didn't know the impact it was going to have on friendships, on relationships, my relationship with my partner. I just assumed we wanted this, we'll be fine. There's just so much that I just did not know or didn't realize. Um, yeah, and it wasn't being talked about. So, that's kind of, 11 years ago. There were bits and pieces. There were a few forums. That's what it would have been kind of, there was no Instagram. There was, I don't think anyway, well, certainly I wasn't on Instagram. I wasn't getting any information like that. But
I
like,
think Instagram only came out 2011-ish.
okay, okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
like it
yeah,
wasn't big, it wasn't big, you know.
yeah, yeah. Yes, that was 2013. Yes, it was there, but not in my radar. So I
Yeah,
was dipping
would have been.
into, yeah, I was dipping a little bit into websites and forums and kind of discussion forums, that kind of thing. And there was bits and pieces. But I literally remember Googling, when does this get easier?
Oh wow.
And that's not a great place to be, to be that kind of, at sea with what's going on. Um, so I was very lucky. The piece where my kind of training and kind of experience did really stand to me was the part of my training was you go to your own therapy, you have your own personal therapy. And I had finished that up just before my daughter was born. And I remember my therapist saying, I'm here if you need me afterwards. I was like, sure, I'm grand, this is, and part of our work together had been, I'd waited a while, it had taken a while to get pregnant. And for me, it was kind of like, like, sure, that's over now. Now I'm pregnant. Now I have the baby, and I sail off into the sunset. And I nearly was kind of looking, going, "What are you talking about?"
Mm.
Um, but I was so lucky that I had a phone number to call, that I didn't, I didn't have to go searching, didn't have to go checking. I knew exactly who to call. So I'm so grateful for that. And I went back to her, and she was just so fabulous. I was able to bring my baby. She let me bring her to this, so I didn't have to think about childcare or any of that. Um, and that was just fabulous. That was just such a massive support to help me make sense of, okay, this is what's going on. This is, I would have been, and I see this with the moms I work with, I would have been, very driven, obviously with all the amount of study that I did, and did that alongside holding down a job, and, quite, sort of high achiever, I suppose. But none of it is any good when you're dealing with a baby. And it was just such a shock to the system of, okay, well, now what? Like, what other resources do I have? And I suppose that's what she really supported me with, to kind of park the type A drive a little bit, and to tap into other resources. And one of the massive one, and she would have talked to me about this, was self-compassion. And she would have talked, just being kinder to yourself, just being gentler, just letting yourself off the hook. And she would have talked about that, and I would have nodded and said, yeah, 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 I'm being very good to myself. But when I went back, after having my baby, that was the big skill I really had to learn.
I think it's really important as well that, like, for you to talk about this as a psychotherapist, like, as well, because you have all those tools. Like, you're literally telling people this, and the fact that you struggled with it too is really, really good. And it's really good, I think, for you to share that. One thing I kind of, you mentioned there, and it's so true, is the talk about the recovery after. There is no mention of that, isn't it? Like, all you ever see in the media and years gone by is this celebrity is back to her pre-baby weight. You're like, I didn't realize until maybe the last 2 or 3 years, and it makes sense it would take such a toll on you, but like, how unhealthy that is as well.
Yeah. And the weight is just one element, and it's it's not even weight. It's like your body has changed. Your body grew a human.
Mhm.
So the shape of it has changed as well. But on so many other levels, like hormones, like the hormones don't just
Yeah.
stop.
Baby.
Yeah, yeah. So that's quite the ride, kind of getting back to stability hormonally. And just I'm going to pause myself here, because I don't want to make it sound horrendous, and I don't. And I have this conversation all the time as part of the, why does nobody talk about it? Why doesn't anyone warn you? This isn't to scare people, but I suppose it's just the logic of, it took your baby 9 months to grow the baby. There has to be, the equal and opposite reaction on the other side. And it's allowing that. And other cultures do it so beautifully, like this, this kind of the 40-day thing, where the village are there. I heard there's a seven, the rule of seven, that oh, maybe it's not seven, but something about in the bed for a certain amount of time, around the bed for a certain amount of time. That it's gradual. It's not just straight out. And
Yeah.
you mentioned the celebrity there, like, Kate Middleton, and I actually feel so sorry for her, because I presume it's not of her choosing, but that she's part of this institution, and the expectations are through the roof. And the day after giving birth, she's there with her hair done and her dress. Oh my, like, just horrendous, the weight of pressure and expectation in that. And yes, so that part is just massive, the expectations and what's expected of us.
Even, like, you're talking about the hormones stuff, but the physical toll giving births will
Yeah.
take on you as well. Like, I remember one of my friends, I'm at the age where I have friends who are having kids, but
Yeah.
one of them, she was like, yeah, so we just had to basically wear a nappy for the last 2 weeks. And I didn't expect that, that was new, but, like,
Yeah.
And she was someone who, I think she had a relatively straightforward childbirth as well. Like, and
Yeah.
if it's not that, you're getting like surgery, and people are like, you realize they're cutting through layers and layers of muscle and tissue to get like, and people are just like, you should be fine tomorrow. Like, what?
Yeah. And it's to really think it through. I think there's a certain amount of awareness of kind of, the 6 weeks you can't drive for 6 weeks after a C-section, but like really think about that and let that land. If you can't drive, there's a reason for that. So you really shouldn't be doing anything else either. Um, yeah, so it's that piece of just the kind of the understanding, but both for moms themselves to realize and understand it, but kind of the people around them as well. And all the other bits, you're not sleeping, like, kind of recovery after any other surgery or physical event is rest and sleep, but you have this baby needing to be fed. um Breastfeeding then as well takes its toll. Like, it's this whole idea of it's natural, but again, that puts expectations through the roof, that natural does not mean easy or automatic at all.
Yeah. And I just like, even not that it, at the risk of putting people off, but
Mm,
I don't think it will, to be honest, put people off having kids. But I think them knowing this will makes it so much easier when things aren't going right, that it's not their fault. This is
absolutely.
normal.
Absolutely. And that's the big piece of that was my downfall. That's where I went, that this isn't working, or this isn't that this feels hard, so there must be something wrong with me. And the piece about knowing in advance, you can plan for it then. So you can make a plan, make a postpartum plan. Like, that should just be, people are planning for where will the baby sleep, and all the baby bits. There needs to be equal amount of planning and thought gone into, okay, and how will mum be supported?
Mhm.
And kind of one thing, I don't know, like, you'd think I'd ask him at some stage, but I don't know where my husband got this, but he went back to work after 2 weeks. Like, that's increased now, kind of, for a lot of people, that the dads have more time off. He had 2 weeks and he went back to work after 2 weeks. And he used to leave, before he'd go out to work in the morning, he'd leave my lunch ready.
Oh, that's lovely.
And I don't know how I would have managed to get a lunch together, never mind eat it as well. It was massive. So somebody had said that to him, leave her lunch, have her lunch ready before you go. And that was massive.
Yeah.
Just knowing that was there, and I could just, when there was a minute, all I had to do was just go straight into eating. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to prepare it. Things like that. The little things are massive.
Yeah. How important do you think it is for women to ask for help? I think is the best way of describing it. Like, because your husband was told by someone he knew to do this, but I think there's a lot of, and again, this comes back to like thinking they're doing something wrong, who just think they just need to power through and try and do it all themselves.
It's so hard because, like, I don't know I don't know if I would have known what to ask for,
Mhm.
and I think that's where the piece about being forewarned, like, there nearly is an element of, it is that the deeper into it you are, the harder it is to climb out. And kind of, if you get to that space of it being difficult without having expected that, it's very hard to kind of put your hand up and say what you need, because you don't know what you need, because you didn't see this coming. So that's where I think it really needs to come much earlier in the process. It needs to be part of um, the antenatal classes. Much, yeah, much. And even somebody actually was saying to me, like, in our 8 week class, 7 of the weeks were about baby, and we gave, the eighth week was as well, but they put it into one of the weeks, a bit of a mention about, mind yourself afterwards. But the focus and sorry, the care of the baby, and of course the labor, like, that was a massive piece of the antenatal as well. But the actual care for yourself, she said, was just a snippet of one of the weeks, and if you'd missed that week, you would have missed that as well. And the big kind of piece of the jigsaw, I suppose, for me, that really helped me to make sense of everything that happened. And this was very much in hindsight, because this was after my son was born. So after my second child, I heard the term matrescence. And matrescence is it's an umbrella term that covers all of the changes. So everything that we've talked about there, kind of the physical, the hormonal, the emotional, relationships changing, your worldview changing, like how your priorities change. So matrescence is an umbrella term for that. So it was the same woman who coined the word doula. So she was really kind of on top of her game and very insightful. Into women and women's experiences. But the parallel to it, the only kind of parallel comparable experience is adolescence. So
Okay.
all the same, physical, hormonal, mental, relationship changes. The big difference is, if you think about it, teenagers get years to go through that, and everyone knows it and recognizes it. No one's asking them, when are you going back to being a child?
Yeah.
But then when you think then of women being asked, when you going back to work, are you back to your pre-baby weight, are you going back to the gym, are you back to yourself, all this back pressure. So it's, for me, that was just a massive piece, a massive, oh my God, like that's what happened. I went through this massive life-changing process. And of course I'm different now coming out the other side of it.
Yeah. It's mad the way you say that. Of course, I'm different coming out the other side of it, and it's like, yeah, like why wouldn't you be? Even if you take into like, having a child, that is a massive change from life in general. Like, that's not going away. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like a career break. You can switch careers or something. Like, you now have. They say 18 years. We know it's not 18 years. you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, like that's it exactly. Like there's an awareness of, okay, yes, there will be a child in my life, and that will change things. And I had a vague, probably not a very deep understanding of that, but I had an awareness of that, and we'll need babysitters and stuff to go out, but like that's the tip of the iceberg. It's the identity piece. It's that your fundamental core identity changes, and I think that's the part where mums unfortunately get caught, that they just didn't see that coming.
Yeah, absolutely. With the people you work with now, do they normally come to you postpartum, or do you have many that come while pregnant, prepartum? I don't know.
Yeah. So up to now, like kind of mostly my focus has been postpartum, but the piece with the antenatal is exactly what we've been saying there. Just
Mm.
don't want to go in scaring people, but so I've done a little bit of work there, but certainly my one-to-ones and the groups I are focused and aimed towards supporting mums as they go through the transition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like when they kind of come to you, obviously they've realized there's something not right, for want of a better
Yeah.
description.
Yeah.
Like, how long does it normally take them to kind of go, okay, I need help?
Oh, that's a how long is a piece of string question, but they can be a few months in.
Mm.
It can be that long before they realize, okay, that this isn't, and there's so many markers that are kind of baby focused. Again, so much is baby focused. That the 6 weeks is kind of put out there as the 6-week turning point, and the baby will be sleeping a bit more in theory. Feeding a bit better, again, in theory. So 6 weeks and 6 months, I suppose, are kind of the ones that are held up. But that's all feeding into that expectation piece, you know. But because of that, I think, mums wait. They wait for the 6 weeks, or they wait for the 6 months, hoping that a turning point will come. And then, like, unfortunately, by the time they do come to me, there can be quite a bit of disappointment, maybe shame, kind of a sense of, why isn't this working out for me? Why do I feel this way? So, a massive piece of the work initially is, there is nothing wrong with you. This is completely, and I don't like the word normal, but like pretty pretty widespread. Like, it is most certainly not you just feeling this way, and here's why. Like, just you know, and kind of feeding it back to them. So like that's when you actually just, you know, repeat back, kind of describe back, can you just stop for a second and think about what you've just told me, and this is what you've been through? That can be a bit of a mirror for them to go, oh gosh, yeah, that just sounds really hard. And it's like,
Mm.
yes, that's why it feels hard. It feels hard because it has been hard. And can we bring in the self-compassion and give yourself a bit of a break here, and just bring those expectations right down and recognize the fabulous job you're doing, your baby, and you know, the baby is often with them, because I do walk, talk, and coffee in the local park. Like I do the therapy that way. Um, so babies are welcome to come into sessions, but that's just a little bit more accessible. The baby can be with, you know, in the buggy out for the walk, and they generally sleep because they're happy out. They're all snuggled up, and they're on their walk, and they're hearing their mum talk. So a massive piece is saying, you know, please look and really see what you have been doing, because that can be a huge piece as well, that the days are so long, and I'm just saying like, oh, like I'm not doing enough. It's like, please look and see how gorgeous and happy and healthy your baby is. And let's get you to that happy and healthy place as well now. You deserve that too.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way that you're saying you do the therapy, the walk and talk with the baby, like, and it just does show the understanding you have for what they're going through. You know, you're not like, and like your therapist before, they're like, you're overwhelmed, you can't really leave the baby. You know, you need to be able to do that, and it just makes it so much easier to, I suppose, like, you'll be more relaxed if you have the baby near you as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it's win-win. The mums are getting their fresh air and their bit of movement and their, you know, nice warm coffee or tea or whatever. And yeah, I suppose it came from like I'd be walking. Well, you know, so two things. First of all, me walking around the park, pushing my buggy and not feeling okay, and wishing, you know, wishing that there
Mm.
was somebody, yeah, so somebody that would come and help. Um, but then, you know, as my kids were getting older, and I'd be in the park playing with them, and I'd see mums on their walks, and I always had that pull of, I hope they're okay.
Mhm.
And kind of from that place, I realized, oh, hang on, you know, there's something here. Maybe this is a way of doing it. Maybe I can actually do the sessions here, to do it with them here
Yeah,
in the park. So yeah.
it's such a beautiful way of doing it, I think. Um, do you think social media has an effect on how mums see themselves?
Yes, yes. So yeah, so I suppose, you know, I kind of tap back into my early experience, and it wasn't there, and kind of the lack of information. I don't know, has it maybe swung too far the other way now, that we're just bombarded with this too much. But it's too much of the, you know, the picture perfect, like, you know, you know, and that is changing as well. There is more openness and honesty. Um, but I think it's the just the volume of it, and you know, to think of a mum in the middle of the night kind of scrolling, and what
God,
she's
yeah.
eating. Yeah, like what she needs is just an actual person, like actual contact, to have the conversations, to tell her own story, not to be reading somebody else's story. The opportunity to tell her story. And yes, social media is just so overwhelming. It really is.
Yeah. No, the reason I suppose I asked that in a sense is I kind of knew what your answer would be. I try to go more open ended, but I kind of felt like that might be the answer. But I do have another friend, because I can only refer to my friends with children. But
Mm.
like, same thing. She'd be saying she's doing something with her kid that may not be like, I don't know, by the book, whatever. You know,
Yeah.
it's, and like, that's life. But then she'd be like, I know I'm not supposed to, blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't even
No,
have
I'm
kids.
super,
So
yeah.
like, you're doing a great job. He's still alive. He's happy. You
Yeah,
know?
good for you. You're a fabulous friend to be saying that, because that's exactly what it is. There's no should, there's no, it's what works, and it's what works for you today and
Mhm.
this week. And that could change next week. That's part of, you know, kind of the roller coaster of it, that it's not about hitting the magic formula and off you go. It's just the constant need to adapt. And even first child to second child, like I did things quite differently with my second child, because he was different. But that's a learning curve as well, because you kind of go in thinking, oh, well, I know exactly now how to mind a baby. No, I don't know how to mind this baby. I've never met this baby before. And we have to get to know each other now again. And yeah, like, I mean, you've picked up a few things along the way and you're wiser going in the second time. But you're parenting a different child and you have another child in the background as well. So it's just different. There's no shoulds. Like if there's one word I could take out of mother's vocabularies, it's the word should, like just the amount of pressure that comes with that. There's no should. It's what's right for you and your situation and your baby and your family.
Yeah. Like, yeah, that's one thing. Obviously, I've no place to comment anyway on what people are doing with their kids. Obviously, as long as they're not like, Michael Jackson swinging off balconies or something like that, the extreme stuff. But like, I'm not going to judge you for what you're doing with your child because I've never had one and I have no place to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
Nobody is on anybody else's child.
that's also true. Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly don't either. I've never cared for your child. I've never been up in the middle of the night. I haven't been in your exact situation. So really, nobody is placed to judge.
Yeah. I love as well how you said that as well about having a second child and you're like, it's not the same because they're different. And like, it's not even like a gender thing or anything like that. It's like people are different. Like,
Yeah,
so of course the kids are going to be different. Like, again, you can't just follow the manual because this one mightn't do things a certain way.
yeah, yeah. And my son was very different, like very different temperament. Um, it was different. It was different. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that shocks mothers as well? That like they're like, okay, right, I have this down now. I've done this before.
Yeah, I don't think anything ever quite matches the level of shock of the first time.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think people can get a little bit caught off guard with, well, this is what worked, and oh, it's not working this time. Um, but at the same time, probably by that stage they have had the conversations, and just go into it with eyes a bit wide open. Yeah.
Do you have many clients who come to you that are on their kind of second, maybe third child as well? Or is it mostly kind of first time mothers you'd see?
Yeah, no, I definitely have second, third time, and part of that can be um the awareness of
Mhm.
it was hard the first time. I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm going to put things in place to support myself the second time. Um yeah, and actually, I suppose just to backtrack a little bit on what you said, if somebody was fortunate enough to have a good experience the first time, and if the second time is a bit harder, yeah, that's where it can come as a bit of a shock of, oh,
Mhm.
I was fine the first time, what's going on here? But there's just sometimes there's just no rhyme or reason as to why. Yeah, you can just react differently.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's interesting even commenting on that, like one who maybe had a very easy first one, the second one can be, for want of a better description, a nightmare because their children, they don't have any they're babies, like they don't have any much processing abilities other than eat, sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And there's so many factors, like, birth experience is a huge piece as well. And you go in with every hope and the birth plan and all of that, but that doesn't always go to plan, and that can be difficult then afterwards as well if it's been unexpectedly difficult.
Yeah, I've heard some stories about that, and like that's enough to put me off any idea. But I know it's like it's not there's no, like you said, there's no rhyme or reason, there's no way of planning for it. Like you can do everything by the book and
Yeah.
things can
Yeah.
just happen. And like I think people don't understand so much how much of a big task childbirth is and how actually dangerous it can be.
Yeah, I mean,
And I'm
you
not
know,
saying that to scare people, but I
yeah,
think more
that's the
to
other piece.
if
Like,
thinking,
it,
yeah,
to be careful about that. Being prepared does
yeah,
go a long way, definitely. Um, and again, for me, what it comes down to is what's lacking, unfortunately, is the support services afterwards. Um, that unfortunately, and it's just the system, and it's basically a financial piece about what's available. Um, I had somebody talking to somebody during the week, and she was saying about somebody who was on leave in one of the hospitals, and like before, like I was asking the question, and I knew as I was asking it, is there no replacement for this person? It was somebody in the mental health services in one of the hospitals was on leave, and I was asking, oh, but is there not cover for them? And as I was asking it, I was like, no, there isn't. And that there isn't, that, that other people are picking up the slack, and people like this client that I'm now working with fell through the cracks there, and no, absolutely no fault of the person on leave, at all. Um, but just the system and the finances aren't there. Another financial decision I heard locally was a mum and baby group that was stopped because two public health nurses were needed to run it. That was deemed 2 hours once a week. And two public health nurses were needed to run it, and that was deemed to be that they didn't have the resources for that.
Right.
Like I had gone in previously and spoken in those groups to 10, 11, 12, 15 mums.
Yeah.
Where are they now? Like, where, 2 hours a week.
Clearly there's that many people in it as well. Like, it's necessary, you know what I mean? It's not a group for 2 or 3 women, it's a group for, you said 10, 15, like they're
Yeah, and it's creating problems down the line. They're not getting the support they need. They're not getting the public health nurse, kind of the opportunity to check in with her. Without that support, what problems is that then creating further down the line? And it's really hard to see these financially driven decisions being made, and to see the consequences of them.
yeah. I think as well, I think that's kind of, and I'm not saying it's not to take away from this, but I think that's an issue across a lot of the mental health services, really,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's still not taken as seriously as it could be.
Yeah.
It should be, not could be.
Unfortunately, it's not, no. And, like when the politicians, and a politician who has been elected, and probably will have a seat in government, in my constituency. And it wasn't him who came to his door, but he was on the road. And so it was whoever, like, and it was the person kind of part of his entourage, kind of, was the one who knocked on my door. And I said, I have 2 issues. I said, one is mental health and one is Gaza. And his face just fell. And I was like, I'm just, no. Yeah, you've lost me already. And, I could see that he was like, oh, do you want to talk? I'm not going to name the politician because it wasn't actually him. So it's not his fault. No, I'm going to go and just take care of my own 2 kids here now this evening. And, that's, I do regret that. Like, I had the opportunity to actually speak to him. Like, I could have said an awful lot. But I could see he was prepared to talk about, kind of the potholes in the roads or whatever. That's what he wasn't ready for the full hammy of talk to me about mental health and talk to me about like, no, I'm not.
This is why I'm so glad I live in apartments, because I never get callers like that. And I wouldn't be bothered. Like, kind of way, I'm just like, no. Yeah, like it shows it's like not even on the radar. It's like,
No.
what can we, like, obviously it's literally that, like, we can paper over a hole, we can fix that, but like, this is an actual issue that's going to take a lot of time and effort to do, so we're going to ignore that.
Yeah, it's a much bigger conversation. Unfortunately, but it just needs to change. That they will need to sit up and listen and address it sometime. They really do.
Yeah, like it's such a crisis over so many areas. Like, it's affecting women, it's affecting men. Like, it's in the UK anyway, it's like the highest suicide's the highest killer of men under 40, I think.
Yeah.
And like, this conversation is here, and it just seems to be like, yeah, we'll do something, but then all the actions say the other way.
It's so hard because I suppose, kind of one kind of taken one angle on it is that mental health needs to be taken as seriously as physical health.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, our hospitals aren't in fantastic shape either. So like it really is. It's just kind of priorities about where is the money going. And yeah, it's the short term fixes without the long term foresight.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of with that, what advice do you have for new mothers or new again mothers? I think you described that for as well. Anyone who is struggling, what advice do you have for them? Because maybe they can't, like they're like that, they've been left by the system, or they're on a waiting list that could be years long.
Yeah, I suppose that the first piece is to really know and understand it's nothing you've done. It's not your fault. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not doing anything wrong. And it can, with the support, it absolutely can get better, because I know that's kind of part of it. And people can fall into, well, what could you do? How can what you don't know my situation. I don't have childcare, so what can I do? But it's the piece about being seen and heard, and there's mindset shifts that just are not can like are massively helpful. But when you're in that dark place, like it literally does kind of go to tunnel vision, and you kind of it's somebody just to open the picture out a little bit for you, and to help you see where the options, where the choices are, um, and to know that if you're finding it hard, it's absolutely not your fault. Um, and then in terms of accessing resources, like obviously my recommendation is therapy. Come and
Mhm.
see someone, and make sure that they're regulated, that they're accredited. So the IACP is one of the regulating bodies. That's who I'm regulated, that's who I'm accredited with. And then IAHIP is the other one. So check the register there, just look and see kind of who's in your area, who do you feel drawn to. And a lot of the centres, if you go to kind of a centre, most of them also have low cost therapy. And if you have health insurance, depending on your policy, you might be able to claim back there as well. But I suppose, and it's a tough one, and there's no judgment at all in this. But I suppose it's looking at what you're spending on your baby. And I know that that's a massive, that can be a massive financial strain. Um, but it's kind of looking and seeing, okay, you deserve, you deserve support as well. Uh,
Mhm.
and to factor that in as well, if at all possible.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point to say that, because like you said, everything you've been talking about so far, everything is focused on the baby and what to do for the baby. But if the mom or father in this case as well, like, if they're not in a good space, they can't provide the care. This, like, mental health affects physical health as well. So it can affect how if you're trying to breastfeed and stuff like that, like, and I think it is worth really, really important that like you've said that to them, that, like, yeah, what can you do for you, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. The other one I always say, everything your baby needs, everything you're prioritizing for your baby, you need to be prioritizing those things for you as well. Um, so even things like, you're watching to see that your baby doesn't become overstimulated, or that, you're not expecting kind of, too much socially from your baby. Don't do that to yourself either. Mind yourself in those ways as well. Um, baby sleep, rest, certainly, for you, you're making sure the baby's getting out for fresh air. Make sure that you're there, absorbing that for yourself as well. Like everything your baby needs, you need to.
Yeah. And, like, to be fair, they're fairly simple, aren't they? They like to eat, they like to sleep, and, like, once they're clothed and well looked after, like, there's been 6 million different things you can get for babies at this point, and, like, how much do you actually need?
Exactly, absolutely. It really is. It's back to basics for both of you, and it won't always be that way. But it's accepting that you are just in survival mode. Like, let's call a spade a spade. That's what it is for the first however long it takes for you. Um, and just to shut everything else out during that time. Like it's all there waiting, like all the kind of social events, all the whatever, it'll all be there.
Yeah.
It's hard to kind of see that now. Like you will get to those things if you want to, but don't try and put pressure on yourself to do any more than you feel capable of, because you are still growing that baby. You're still the bottom line for them, so you need to take care of yourself to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think that was a really good point as well, saying things are still there. Because, like, as you're saying, it being like an identity shift, it can be very hard for you to realize I maybe can't go to this, and this week. Also, my body might be recovered, but like, you don't have to. The people will still be there and they will understand. Like,
And I think that's especially, I'm really meeting it now over the last week or two. That's so huge coming up to Christmas. Like, please, this baby's first Christmas. Oh my goodness, like baby doesn't know the difference.
oh
You
my
know,
God, stuff
like
wrecks me.
let both of you off the hook, and there'll be plenty more Christmases, but don't be putting yourself under pressure for the matching pajamas and the perfect photo with Santa. Oh my God, that's just oh no. Let both of you off the hook for that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That is something that annoys me when people like, every little thing, and that's definitely a social media thing. Every
Yeah.
little, look at this doing this, baby doing this, baby. The baby doesn't care. Baby has no idea.
No, no. And if you're stressed and up the walls, baby will care about that, because
Yeah,
baby will pick up on that. And no, just keep everyone nice and calm and enjoy it as best as you can. But just allow yourself the grace not to be putting yourself under pressure for these picture perfect moments.
yeah. No, that's a brilliant thing to say. I think that's pretty much everything I have to ask you, Marci. But I do ask everybody one thing at the end of every podcast, and that is, what is the best advice you've ever been given?
Oh, the best advice. Oh my goodness. So I suppose a big one that goes around in my head. I wasn't given it directly, but it was a quote, and it's my mantra still. From Amy Poehler.
Mm.
Um, so she's an American comedian, but after her child, she said kind of her mantra, and it has become mine, is good for her, not for me.
Yeah,
And I just love it. Like it allows so much grace on both sides. Good for her. That's great that she's doing that and that's working for her. Genuinely good for her, but it is not for me. And that's okay. Neither of us are wrong here. It's just for her and her set of circumstances. That's what's working for her. I don't feel that that's right for me or that's going to work for me. That's okay as well. So it just cuts through that comparison, and just we're all just doing our best, and just to let that be enough.
I love that. And it's really, like I said, cuts through that comparison. And it's, you know what, it's takes a lot of like confidence in yourself to say that.
Yeah, I think like I'm actually questioning myself now. Was it after she became a mother, or was it just her anyway? I think it's just a useful one for any
Yeah,
woman, because
absolutely.
we all get caught in that trap of, oh, she's doing this, or um, yeah, good for her. That's not going to work for me, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's fab. Like, I even listening to that going, I could use that, and I don't even have a kid.
Yeah, yeah. It's across the board. It's such a good one.
um so with that, before you go, can you tell everybody where they can find you?
So my website is Marci Carroll Psychotherapy, .ie, and then I am on Instagram as Motherhood Matters _ with Marci. So they'd be the
Yeah,
two ways. Yeah.
I love that. For anyone else who's looking to find me, I am on Instagram and TikTok. So my Instagram is at strong the saddle with an underscore at the end, because someone beat me to it. And my TikTok is at strong the saddle. You'll see most of the same stuff on it anyway. But and my website www.chrissyhawkins.com. So just want to say thanks again for joining us today, Marci.
Chrissy, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, it's been great to have you on. I think it's going to help so many people as well.
I hope so.
Wording is.
I really do appreciate everybody who listens to this podcast. So if you please could help me with the algorithm and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And even, if you want to reach out and suggest topics for me, I'd be delighted to hear from you. Drop me a DM on Instagram or TikTok. And thanks again for listening.